is Jessa. On August 9th, I gave birth to my very first baby, and I wanted to share my birth story with you. During my pregnancy, I was watching a ton of birth videos, birth vlogs, and also asking all of my friends who had had babies recently what their birth experience was like, just so that I can get an idea of what to expect. I feel like every first time mom is like that as well. At least I feel like I was very curious and, scared, trying to figure out what is going to happen. And I kind of had a different experience from everyone that I had spoken to, and from all the birth stories that I watched, no one had the same experience that I had. So I thought it was worth sharing in case someone was going to do a mechanical induction like I had. The baby's due date was on August 3rd. And I had an appointment the next day because, the baby still hadn't come yet. And when the doctor checked me, I was only 1 centimeter dilated and 50% effaced. So some progress, but not really. She also did a membrane sweep while she checked how far along I was. And if you've never had that done, it is very uncomfortable, so just keep that in mind if you're planning on asking your doctor to do it. I asked my doctor to do it because, according to one of my friends who had her baby last year, she had her membrane swept and then 2 days later she went into labor. It's supposedly something that could help jumpstart your labor, but I don't know how scientific that is. But I asked for it. It is uncomfortable. You may spot afterwards. I did. And I was a little bit sore too. The doctor said that because I was only 1 centimeter dilated and 50% effaced, she thought it would be a good idea for me to have a mechanical induction using a Foley balloon. And basically a Foley balloon is this long tube that has a balloon at the end, and they inject a saline solution to expand the balloon. The balloon is inserted into your cervical opening, and the idea is that when the balloon is in there, it helps stretch out your cervical opening enough so that it will fall out and you'll stay dilated at least to a 4. So they planned to have me go in that following Saturday, August 8th, Saturday night. They asked me to come in at 8 p.m. and then they said that I would be able to go home, come back the next day at 4 p.m. and have like the medicinal induction, I guess. And so I was hoping that I would go into spontaneous labor in between that time, but unfortunately I did not. So August 8th at 8 p.m. I went into the hospital. Because we are in a pandemic, I had to go by myself. My husband was in the car waiting. We had packed everything for our stay at the hospital just in case we had to stay. So he was just waiting in the car. And before they inserted the Foley balloon, they monitored my heart rate and the baby's heart rate beforehand for 30 minutes. And then they inserted the balloon. It is uncomfortable when they do that as well. Again, I was 1 centimeter dilated, so maybe that's why it was more uncomfortable for me. Maybe if you're dilated a little bit more, it wouldn't have been so uncomfortable. But if you were also dilated more, maybe they wouldn't have suggested to do the Foley balloon. So they inserted the Foley balloon, and after that they monitored me again, me and the baby, for another, they said it would be anywhere from 30 to an hour. And at around 45 minutes, the doctor had come in to check on me and was saying that the baby's heart rate was at a certain level. I don't remember how many beats per minute it was. And then after the balloon was inserted, it had raised a little bit and it wasn't going down, and it was kind of like going up and down, to the point where they weren't super concerned like they needed to intervene, but they just wanted to keep monitoring me. So instead of sending me home to come back the next day, they just admitted me then. And around that time, it was probably around 10 o'clock. So at that point, they were going to admit me, and they were getting my room ready, and they told me that I could tell my husband that he could come up as well. So by the time that my husband came up, it was probably around like 11, and we were escorted to our labor and delivery room. Around midnight is when I already started feeling a little bit of contractions, just like mild cramping. And I did experience a lot of back labor during my contractions. And also my contractions were happening one on top of the other. Usually by your bedside, they have a screen that shows the tracking of your contractions. That screen also showed the contractions of the other women that were on the labor and delivery floor as well, just so that the nurses can keep track of everyone at the same time. And you could see how like theirs had like actual like peaks and valleys, where mine was kind of like just one on top of the other and not really having like definitive peaks and definitive valleys. It wasn't a like really bad pain at that time. Like I would say anytime between like midnight and 4 a.m. it was at like a 3-4 pain level. I was able to eat, but they had me on a clear liquid diet. So I was only able to have water, juice, and Jello, which I don't really like Jello, but I was so hungry. I made the dumb choice of not eating before I left, and was starving. So I just took anything that they could give me to eat, just so that I had like something in my stomach, and also something to just distract me. And every once in a while I would get up and change positions. I would like lean on the bed and maybe sit in a chair, or just turn from side to side and have my husband like massage my back, because again, I was experiencing more back labor. In addition to the Foley balloon, they also gave me Cytotec, I think that's what it's called, and it was basically a little pill that they gave me to help thin out my cervix. So the Foley balloon is to expand my dilation, and then the pill was to help thin me out. I was already 50% effaced, so I don't think like, I think they gave me half a pill, and I think that was like right when I came into the labor and delivery room, probably around like maybe anytime between midnight and 1 o'clock. And then they did give me another pill, or another half pill, I want to say maybe 4:30 a.m. I'm not quite sure. I can't remember if I was hooked up to an IV just yet, but every once in a while I would go to the bathroom. I don't think I was hooked up to an IV, because I was only hooked up to the heart rate monitors, both mine and the baby's heart rate monitors. So at about, I want to say 7, I went to get up and use the restroom, and when I got up to, when I was finished, the Foley balloon fell out. And that's a good thing, because they were tugging on the balloon every once in a while to like encourage it to fall out on its own, but the doctor said that they were only comfortable with it being inserted for, I believe, like 12 hours. So they would have removed it if it hadn't fallen out on its own, but it did. And after the Foley balloon fell out, the nurses came in and they checked me again, and I was 6 centimeters and I was 100% effaced, which was great. So things were progressing, and at that point I was comfortable getting the epidural already, because the pain level was getting to be more like a 6-7. So I told them to like call the anesthesiologist, like, to let them know that I was getting the epidural, and as soon as he could get here, I would like to receive it. And he got there an hour later, like around 8 a.m. And at that point, it was already at like a 9 pain level. And again, it was mostly like back labor that I was having. And when he came in, I was in so much pain that he was like, okay, like, I'm gonna go over the risks. And I was like, sure, you do that, and I'm gonna just cling to the side of my bed and scream, and you go ahead and you tell me the risks. I promise that I'm listening. And he was just like, okay, like, no worries. And I know that they say to ask them to wait until a contraction is over so that, like, you can stay as still as possible. But I was in so much pain that I was like, I don't care, like, you just go for it and I will stay as still as possible. And it did not hurt as bad as the contractions. You feel a little prick from the shot that they give you to numb the area, but after that, you really don't feel anything. And he was really quick. Once the epidural was given, everything from the waist down felt totally fine, and I was able to finally rest, because from midnight until I got the epidural, I wasn't really able to sleep through those contractions. I think maybe I had like 30 minutes of being able to kind of like relax, because the contractions weren't as crazy, but wasn't really able to get any sleep. So after he gave the epidural, I knocked out and I slept. I had, I think, like a 2.5 hour nap, because the nurse came in at like 10:30 or 10:45, and she wanted to turn me over because I was lying on my back. But after they give you an epidural, they like to like move you from side to side, just so that I think they want to disperse it helps disperse the medicine evenly, and then also I think it just helps with like your circulation as well. When she turned me over, I kind of felt like a warm substance come out, and I thought that I had pooped, and that was something I was really worried about. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna poop. But when I did turn over and I felt something, I was like, oh, like, did something come out? And she was like, yeah, your water broke. And I was like, oh, okay. So I was really excited about that, because before I fell asleep, the nurses were talking about arranging for them to come and break my waters, because it hadn't broke yet, but because it broke on its own, we didn't have to worry about that. So that was really good. And after my water broke, the nurses checked me again, and I was at 9.5 centimeters. So during that time, during my nap, things progressed really well. And after my water broke, again, I still didn't feel any contractions. Once it was getting to 12 p.m., I did start feeling more pressure, like that pressure that you feel like you need to use the restroom. But that came in waves as well. And when I told the nurse that I was feeling the pressure, she was like, okay, we'll probably start doing practice pushes then. And I had seen this video from a girl here on YouTube who's a doula. She was talking about how when you do feel that pressure, you don't want to push until the nurses tell you to push, because you could potentially tear. And so when I told the nurses, she was like, okay, like, we'll come back and we'll check you again and let you know when we can start doing the practice pushes. So when I was feeling those urges, I was doing these breathing techniques that YouTuber, that doula, had suggested to do, because it just helps you focus on not pushing when you have those, when you feel that pressure, so that you don't push. So I was doing those breathing techniques the whole time that I was feeling the pressure, up until the nurse came in and was like, okay, let's practice pushing. And so when when she would tell me to push, she was watching when I was going to have a contraction, and then she would tell me to push. And in the beginning, the pressure wasn't lining up with when she was telling me the contractions were happening. So it was weird. It would feel like I needed to push, and I would wait. And then when she was telling me to push, I didn't feel those urges anymore. So in the beginning, it was kind of hard to get the feeling for pushing, just because I felt like the urge was gone. But eventually it lined up. So since my contractions were happening one on top of the other, I was pushing for one contraction, resting for another contraction, and then pushing again at the next one. So every other contraction I was pushing, and I was pushing for 10 seconds, taking a deep breath, pushing again for 10 seconds, taking a deep breath, and then pushing again for 10 seconds. At that last third set of pushing was when it was really hard to stay pushing. I was kind of struggling a little bit to keep holding my breath and push. But the nurses were really encouraging, and when she was starting to make her way out, crowning a little bit, they were asking if I wanted the mirror. At first I rejected it because I was like, I don't really know. But then when the nurse said after a while, you can really see the top of her head, and my husband said that he could see the top of her head, I was like, okay, maybe I do want to see. And so they brought in the mirror, and they let me they positioned the mirror so that I can see while I was pushing as well. And if you have any reservations about whether or not you want to see it, I would say do it. I mean, it's not a bloody mess down there just yet, and I think it is a little bit motivating just to see you're actually doing something, because especially if you do get the epidural, it is a little bit hard to get the feeling for pushing, and you don't really, I don't know, I didn't really feel like when I was pushing, I felt like, man, is anything really even happening? Is anything moving forward? And so when you do see the head, you're kind of like, oh, okay, I'm doing a good job, and I can see that my efforts are actually being having results. So get the mirror, I would say. And then after a while, it's just me, it was just me and my husband and one nurse. And then after a while, another nurse comes in, and she's setting up the bassinet where the baby's going to be in. And then another nurse comes in, and she's on the computer, entering in some stuff. And as it progressed, more nurses were coming in. And so it felt more okay, things are happening. I was getting more emotional because I had seen the baby's head crowning, and, my husband was getting excited, and it was getting close. And my midwife, the midwife nurse, I think it's a CNM is their correct abbreviation, but she was coming in, and she was like, okay, we already called the doctor, they're going to be coming in soon, you're going to be ready to start really doing not practice pushes, but really going for it. And at that time, those pressure, the pressure waves that I was feeling were lining up with my contractions. And so my nurse was telling me, when you feel like a contraction is coming, you let us know, and you can start pushing whenever you want to push. So there were a couple times when I was like, okay, I feel like I need to push, and they were like, yeah, okay, let's do it. And I would push, and they were telling me I was doing a good job. And I really liked my nurses too, because every once in a while they would ask me if I wanted to change positions of how I was pushing. So I wasn't just pushing on my back. I think for one set of pushes, I was on my side. And then for another set of pushes, they repositioned my legs so that I was pushing. So I was kind of in a deeper squat position, I guess you could say, still on my back, but they pulled I forget what they're called, the stirrups. They pulled the stirrups in closer so that I could really like bear down. But they really helped me kind of like try different positions of ways that I could push to like progress a little bit more. At 1:28 p.m. I took my final last push, and she came out and they placed her on my chest. It is the craziest thing watching your baby come out. If you're pushing with your eyes closed, make sure to open at the last second so you can see. But it was a very crazy experience. When the baby finally comes out, that feeling is crazy. And then when they put the baby on your chest, it's like the best feeling ever. They were like wiping her down while she was on my chest, and at that point the doctor was already there, but my midwife was the one who actually like caught the baby and put her on my chest. And then when the doctor came in, the doctor is the one who stitched me up because I had a 2nd degree tear, which means not only did like the top layer of my skin tear, but the muscle tore as well. So I was going pretty hard. And during that time that I had the epidural, you can like press on the button if you feel like you need a little bit more of the medication to be like, if you need a little bit more of the medication. But I hadn't pressed the button that whole entire time. And so when they were stitching me up, I felt a little bit of tugging, and they were asking if it was painful, and I was like, not really. But then as they kept stitching, I was like, no, I think it hurts. So they gave me a little bit more of the medication for that pain down there. After that, they cleaned her up, they wrapped her, and we were moved to our like, what is it called? Like our family bonding room, I guess is what it's called. And when the nurses were leaving, I was like just super grateful, and they were so nice. I was really glad that I had really good nurses. I feel like sometimes you hear that like some nurses aren't as nice, but all of the nurses that had helped me that day were super, super nice. The whole time they were wearing masks, and whenever they would come in, I would put my mask on. And if I happened to not have my mask on at a time, they were never like rude about it and asking me to put it back on. Obviously, before I was admitted to the hospital, they did test me for COVID as well, which I was negative. They didn't test my husband because they kind of just assumed that if I was negative, then he would be negative because we are living together. It was so crazy. It happened so fast. And overall, I had a great experience. Great in that I was able to experience contractions, even though it wasn't spontaneous labor, even though it was a induced labor. Overall, it was a really good experience. I was able to experience contractions, get an epidural at the point that the contractions were getting too much for me, and there were no complications with the baby's delivery. I even told the nurses, I was like, I had a great time. It was great. It was a really great experience, and I think if anybody who is, late on their delivery and not dilated, I think that's a Foley balloon is probably a really good solution, or a really good way to help progress your labor. I don't know if every doctor recommends it. I had never heard anybody else use a Foley balloon, but yeah, the Foley balloon with the side attack, I highly recommend if that is the way that you're also experiencing zero to little dilation and only 50% effacement. It worked for me. It was the craziest thing and the best thing that I've ever done. you definitely feel like women empowerment afterwards. But yeah, that's my birth story, and I hope that anyone else who is pregnant right now and worried or curious about how their labor and delivery is going to go, hopefully this can give you a little bit of insight if you find that you are not far along in dilation once you get closer to your due date, and maybe talk to your doctor about if it's an option for you. But yeah, I hope that this was helpful for you guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.